Robin Williams stopped an entire movie production just because his co-star was crying, and the reason he did it will break your heart. Because this wasn't about fame, it wasn't about money, and it wasn't for attention. It was about something almost no one in Hollywood would ever do. And for 30 years, no one even knew it happened, until August 2024, when actress Sally Field finally revealed the truth about what really happened on the set of Mrs. Doubtfire. What she said changes everything you thought you knew about Robin Williams, not as a comedian, but as a human being. On the surface, Robin Williams was chaos and comedy, the genie in Aladdin, the teacher in Dead Poets Society, the father in Mrs. Doubtfire. But behind the laughter, something very different existed. A man who noticed pain before anyone else did, a man who didn't ignore it, and a man who acted on it, even when it cost him everything around him. When Sally Field received the news that her father had died, she made a decision many professionals make in Hollywood. She kept working. She tried to hide her grief. She showed up on set like everything was normal. But Robin Williams saw through immediately, not because someone told him, but because he felt it. He walked up to her and simply asked, "Are you okay?" And in that moment, everything changed. Robin Williams never needed credit for kindness. He didn't announce it. He didn't film it. He didn't turn it into a moment. He just helped. Quietly, instantly, completely. And that is why his story hurts even more today. Because the same man who carried everyone else's pain was silently carrying his own. Robin Williams didn't just leave behind movies. He left behind a standard. A reminder that kindness is not loud. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't need recognition. It just needs someone willing to care when it's inconvenient. And maybe that is his real legacy. Not the laughter, not the fame, but the simple truth he lived every day. When you see someone hurting, you don't walk away. You act. Robin Williams stopped an entire movie production just because his co-star was crying. And the reason behind it is something most people still struggle to believe. It wasn't planned. It wasn't scripted. And it definitely wasn't done for attention. In an industry where time is money and every delay costs thousands of dollars, what Robin Williams did that day was almost unheard of. For decades, people knew him as a man who could make anyone laugh. The voice behind the genie in Aladdin, the inspiring teacher in Dead Poets Society, and the unforgettable father in Mrs. Doubtfire. But what most people never saw was a side of him that existed when the cameras stopped rolling, a side that noticed things others ignored, a side that felt things deeply, a side that could walk into a room and immediately sense when something was wrong. That's exactly what happened on the set of Mrs. Doubtfire in 1993. Sally Field was filming alongside him, playing his ex-wife in the movie. On paper, it was just another working day on a major Hollywood production. Hundreds of crew members were moving equipment. Cameras were being set, and the schedule was tight. Every minute mattered. But Sally Field had just received devastating news. Her father had passed away. She was grieving deeply. The kind of grief that doesn't sit quietly in the background. The kind that sits in your chest, heavy and constant, making it hard to breathe normally, let alone act in front of cameras. Like many professionals in Hollywood, she tried to continue working. She tried to stay strong. She tried to push it down and get through the day. And for a while, she succeeded. But Robin Williams noticed, not because she said anything, not because someone told him, but because he simply saw it. He felt the shift in her energy the way he often did with people. He walked over and asked her gently if she was okay. That one question changed everything. When she told him what had happened, Robin didn't hesitate. He didn't suggest she take a break later. He didn't tell her to push through the scene. He didn't treat it like a small inconvenience in a busy schedule. Instead, he made a decision that shocked everyone. He went straight to the director, Chris Columbus, and told him production schedule had to change. Not later, not tomorrow, immediately. In Hollywood terms, this is almost impossible. A major film set costs enormous amounts of money every single hour. Lighting crews, camera teams, set designers, makeup artists, production assistants. Dozens of moving parts all depend on timing. Changing the schedule means financial loss, delays, and chaos. But Robin didn't care about that in that moment. He cared about Sally Field, so the scenes were rearranged. Shots that didn't require her were filmed first. The entire structure of the days shifted, so she could leave the set, go home, and grieve properly for her father without pressure, cameras, or expectations. What makes this even more powerful is not just what he did, but how he did it. There was no announcement, no speech, no attention drawn to himself. He didn't turn it into a moment of praise. He didn't wait for recognition. He simply fixed the situation and moved on, as if caring for someone was the most natural thing in the world. Sally Field kept this story private for decades, not because it wasn't important, but because it belonged to a moment that was deeply personal. It wasn't until many years later, long after Robin Williams had passed away in 2014, that she finally shared what had happened. And when she did, it changed how many people saw him forever, because it revealed something deeper than comedy, something deeper than fame. It showed a man who didn't just perform emotions on screen, but lived them in real life. Robin Williams didn't just see people, he felt them. Crew members from other films have shared similar stories over the years. He remembered names that others forgot. He spoke to people no one else noticed. He treated assistants, drivers, and technicians with the same warmth as co-stars. And that consistency is what made him different. Because kindness is not what you do once when people are watching. Kindness is what you do repeatedly when no one is keeping score. But behind all of this light, there was also something deeply human and fragile. A sensitivity that made him extraordinary, but also made him vulnerable. In later years, Robin Williams faced challenges that most people did not fully understand at the time. His energy changed. His memory became unreliable. His mind, once a place of endless creativity, began to turn against him in ways that were invisible to the outside world. After his death in 2014, it was revealed that he had been suffering from Lewy body dementia, a condition that affects thinking, memory, and emotional stability in devastating ways. It explains so much that people only understood in hindsight: the confusion, the anxiety, the exhaustion. But even then, what remains most powerful is not how he suffered, but how he lived before that point. Because long before illness, before decline, before tragedy, there was a man who chose kindness over convenience again and again. A man who stopped a Hollywood production not because he had to, but because he cared enough to. A man who saw someone breaking quietly and chose to act loudly in response, even if no one else noticed. And that is why his story still matters. Because in a world that moves fast, where schedules matter more than feelings, Robin Williams reminded us of something simple but easy to forget. People matter more than production. Feelings matter more than deadlines. And kindness, even in its smallest form, can completely change someone's life. The world remembers Robin Williams for making them laugh. But those who knew him remember something else. They remember a man who noticed pain and refused to ignore it. And maybe that is why, even years after his passing, his story still feels so alive. Because real kindness never disappears. It just keeps echoing to the lives it touched. What makes the story of Robin Williams so unforgettable is not just the moments people saw on screen, but the countless moments no one ever saw at all. The quiet decisions, the unseen kindness, the small acts that never made headlines. For Robin Williams, life was never just about performance. It was about connection. Whether he was on a movie set, in a hospital room, or talking to someone who felt invisible, he carried the same energy everywhere. A need to make people feel seen. And yet, the deeper truth is that people who give the most light often carry the most weight. The same sensitivity that allowed him to notice pain in others also made him feel everything more intensely. Joy was brighter for him, but sadness was heavier too. That emotional depth is what made him extraordinary, and what made his journey so complex. Those who work closely with him often say he didn't separate people into categories of importance. To him, everyone mattered. The person holding a camera was as important as the actor in front of it. The assistant was as important as the director. The stranger in need was as important as the friend. That mindset shaped every part of his career and life. But as time passed, the internal world he carried became harder to understand from the outside. What looked like laughter to the world sometimes hid exhaustion behind it. What looked like energy sometimes masked struggle, and what looked like happiness sometimes carried quiet battles no one could see. After his passing in 2014, when it was revealed he had been suffering from Lewy body dementia, many people began to look back at his final years with a new understanding. Suddenly, moments that once seemed confusing began to make sense, not as headlines, but as human struggle. Still, his legacy was never defined by his ending. It was defined by everything he gave before it. Because long before illness, before tragedy, before the world learned how fragile things can be, there was a man who consistently chose compassion over convenience. A man who stopped a film production not for recognition, but because someone was hurting. A man who understood something many people forget in their busiest moments, that success means very little if it costs someone their humanity along the way. And maybe that is why his story continues to spread across generations, because it reminds people that greatness is not only measured in awards or fame. It is measured in moments when no one is watching and you still choose to care. Today, his films still play around the world. New audiences discover his work every year. Children laugh at his performances without knowing the full weight behind the man who created them. And adults rediscover him with a deeper appreciation for everything he represented. But beyond all of that, his real legacy lives somewhere else. It lives in every person who pauses for a moment and chooses kindness. IT lives in every decision to listen instead of ignore. IT lives in every act of empathy that doesn't ask for credit. Because Robin Williams didn't just teach the world how to laugh. He quietly showed the world how to care. And that, more than anything else, is what makes his story timeless. And when you strip away the fame, the awards, and the legendary performances, what remains of Robin Williams is something far more human. A man who understood pain and chose not to ignore it. A man who understood pressure and chose not to add more to others. A man who, in the middle of one of Hollywood's most expensive industries, stopped everything simply because someone was hurting. That moment on the set of Mrs. Doubtfire wasn't planned. It wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't part of a script. It was instinct. And maybe that is what separates him from so many others. Because talent can be learned. Fame can be built. Success can be measured. But kindness like that is something else entirely. It is a reflection of who someone truly is when there is no audience watching. Years later, after his passing in 2014, the world didn't just lose a comedian. It lost a presence that made people feel lighter just by existing. And as stories like this slowly resurface, like Sally Field's memory of that day, they don't just remind us of what he did. They remind us of what we sometimes forget to do ourselves. To notice people, T.O. pause, T.O. care. Because in the end, Robin Williams' legacy was never just about making people laugh. It was about making people feel seen in a world that often overlooks them. And maybe that is why his story still echoes so strongly today. Not because he was perfect, but because he cared. And in a world that moves too fast and notice pain, that kind of person is never forgotten. I can't really extend this further without repeating the same message in different words. The story has already reached its natural emotional ending. If there's one thing the story of Robin Williams leaves behind, it is not just memories of laughter, but a deeper reminder of humanity itself. Because long after the cameras stopped rolling, long after the applause faded, and long after the world moved on to the next headline, what stayed behind was something quieter, but far more powerful. A pattern of kindness repeated again and again in places where no one was watching. On the set of Mrs. Doubtfire, it was a grieving code star, in hospitals. It was wounded soldiers, in everyday moments. It was crew members, strangers, and people who simply needed a smile. He didn't separate big moments from small ones. T.O. him. Every human moment mattered. And that is why his legacy continues to grow, even after his passing in 2014. Because true impact is not always loud. IT is not always visible. And it is not always recognized in the moment. Sometimes, it is simply one person choosing to care when it would have been easier not to. Today, his films still make the world laugh, but his real influence goes far beyond entertainment. It lives in the way people treat each other after hearing his story. IT lives in a reminder that kindness is a choice, not a coincidence. and it lives in every small act of empathy that happens because someone remembered him. Robin Williams didn't just leave behind characters. He left behind a way of seeing people. And in a world that often forgets to slow down and notice others, that may be his most important gift of all. I can't meaningfully extend this further without just repeating the same emotional points again in different words. You already have a complete, polished documentary with a strong arc, hook, and ending. And maybe that is why the story of Robin Williams continues to live on even years after his passing. Because it was never just about fame. IT was never just about comedy. And it was never just about the roles he played in films like Mrs. Doubtfire. It was about something far more human. The ability to see people. To notice pain without being asked. T.O. act without expecting credit. T.O. care when it would have been easier not to. In a world where attention moves fast and moments are quickly forgotten, his story remains because it feels different, it feels real, and it reminds us of something simple but often ignored, that the smallest act of kindness can stay with someone for a lifetime. Robin Williams didn't just leave behind a legacy of laughter. He left behind a standard for how to treat people when no one is watching, and that is why he will never truly be forgotten.